You are welcome to Corrosive Online Tutorials, where complex problems are made easy. In this video, I want to discuss sword. Okay? Now, the first thing that will come to your mind is what is sword? Now, let's take it slowly. This is mathematics. So we have to take it very slow. Okay? So what is sword? Now, sword is an irrational number. Sword is an irrational number. Wow. Now, this word is a big word also, so I need to still break this word down. What is an irrational number? An irrational number, an irrational number is a number, or I can say irrational numbers are numbers whose value has no ending. Okay, so an irrational numbers are numbers whose value has no ending. Now, I can give you an example of an irrational number. Now, what are examples? Now, examples of irrational numbers are square roots of non-perfect square. Square root of non-perfect square. So think of any non-perfect square. When you take the square root of such number, you get an irrational number. For example, 2 is a non-perfect square. So if I take the square root of 2, this is an irrational number. 3 is a non-perfect square. If I take the square root of 3, then this is an irrational number. 4, of course, is a perfect square because the square root of 4 is 2, so it's a perfect square. So 4 cannot be the square root of 4 cannot be an irrational number. 5 is not a perfect square. So the square root of 5 is an irrational number. And all these irrational numbers are called sword. I hope that is clear. Now, let's talk about the laws of sword. The laws of sword. The laws of sword. Okay? The laws of sword. Laws of sword. Now, the first one says that the square root of A plus the square root of B is not equal to the square root of A plus B. Is not equal. For example, square root of 2, an irrational number, plus the square root of 3 is not equal to the square root of 2 plus 3. You know that will give us 2 plus 3 will give us what? Will give us square root of what? 5. So these two and this one, they are not equal. What is on the left hand side and what is on the right hand side is not the same. So the first law you need to know, which is called the law of addition, is that the square root of A plus the square root of B is not equal to the square root of A plus B. It's not equal. So take note of that. So anytime you are solving sword and you come across this problem, never apply this law to not work. Okay? Now, number 2 also has to do with subtraction. The same process. Square root of A minus the square root of B is not equal to the square root of A minus B. No, it's not equal. That means you cannot say that the square root of 5 minus the square root of 3 is equal to 5 minus 3, which will now be equal to the square root of what? 2. No, it's not equal. It's not equal. Don't apply that. It's not acceptable in mathematics. Okay? Number 3. Number 3 has to do with division, or let me say multiplication. Number 3 says that the square root of A times the square root of B, this one is equal to the square root of A times B, which is equal to the square root of AB. This one is correct. you can apply it this way. So you can say that the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 is equal to the square root of 2 times 3, which will give us the square root of what? 6. So the square root of 6 is equal to these 2. Okay? Very well. You can apply that. Now the last one is division, which says that square root of A divided by the square root of B is the same thing as the square root of A divided by B. Okay, these ones, they are equal. You can apply it and your result will be okay. For example, this one can be, for example, I can have what we call square root of 32 over the square root of 2 here. This one will be the same thing as the square root of 32 over 2. And this over this will give me square root of 16. And the square root of 16 is what? 4. Okay? It's acceptable. It's allowed. Okay? So these are the laws. Now, one thing you need to know about sword is this. In sword, it is forbidden. It is not allowed for the denominator to be a sword. You know, we have a fraction. For example, if I have 1 over 2 is a fraction. This one is called the numerator. Why this one is called the denominator. Now, in sword, the denominator must not be the sword. We don't allow the sword to be at the denominator, but we can allow the sword to be at the numerator. For example, if we have something like this, 1 over root 2, we don't leave our answer like this, or we don't allow this, because the sword is at the denominator. But when we have something like this, root 2 over 2, yes, the sword is at the numerator. What we have at the denominator is a whole number. So it is allowed this way. This one is allowed, but this one is not allowed. So anytime you have a problem, like, what do you now do? You rationalize. Why do we rationalize? We rationalize to ensure that the denominator is no longer a sword. Okay, we shift the sword to the numerator. For example, let me show you what I mean of how to rationalize. The aim of we rationalizing is to ensure that the denominator is not a sword. For example, let me say I have something like this. I have 3 root 5. You see, 3 root 5 is not allowed in mathematics. So what do? We try to remove the sword from the denominator. Now, to remove this sword, what must I do? You multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the sword. That means you multiply here by root 5 over root 5. When you do this, we say that you have rationalized. Okay, this is how to rationalize. The reason we rationalize is to remove the sword from the denominator. So let's go. You see, 3 times root 5, you get 3 root 5. Now, root 5 times root 5. Now you can apply the law of multiplication, which means that you can take 5 times 5. And the next line, 3 over root 5. 3 root 5 over 5 times 5 is 25. And the square root of 25 is 5. So the square root of 25 is 5. So our answer will now become 3 root 5 over 5. Now this is our final answer. So you must know how to rationalize when dealing with sword. Let me give another example again. For example, let's say you have let me say you have 6 over root 7. You see, you cannot leave your answer, or it's like this, it will not work, because the sword is at the denominator, which is not allowed in mathematics. So you want to remove the sword from where? The denominator, and take it to where? The numerator. To do that, you have to what? Rationalize. And if you want to rationalize, you multiply this sword by the numerator and also by the what? The denominator. Okay, so we can say here is root 7 times root 7. So this will now give us 6 times root 7 will give us 6 root 7 over, then 7 times 7, you apply the law. okay, is multiplication. So I can take it inside 7 times 7 like this. And 7 times 7 is 49. Okay, so you have root 6 root 7 over square root of what? 49. Now, the square root of 49 is a whole number, which is what? 7. So I have 6 root 7 over what? 7. Now, I can leave my answer in this one because the sword is not in the denominator, but where? In the numerator. I hope that is taken. Now, sometimes we might have it this way, and this one is a single fraction now. Now, we might have the addition of two fractions. Now, in that case, what do you do? Now, what I am teaching you now, I am talking about rationalization. Rationalization. And you should know the meaning of the word rationalization. We want to remove the sword from the where? The denominator. Look at this question now. If you have 1 over root 3 plus root 2. Now, this one is a little bit different from the one I just did now. It's a little bit different. Now, when you have something like this, what do you do? It's very clear. Now, you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the sword. That is a new word. Now, what is a conjugate? The conjugate of this sword is this sword, but you change the sign. So, the sword here is root 3 plus 2. So, the conjugate will be root 3 minus 2. If the sword is root 5, if it is root 5 plus root 7, the conjugate of this sword will be root 5 minus root 7. Just change the sign. That is what we call the conjugate. So you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the sword to rationalize when you have a fraction like this. Okay, so let's go. So when I have this like this, what do I do? Multiply by root 3, but I will change here to minus root 2 over root 3 minus root 2. Now what happens? 1 times everything there, you get the same thing, because 1 times anything is that thing. So 1 times root 3 minus root 2 will give us root 3 minus root 2. Root 3 minus what? Root 2. Now let's go. Now you use this to multiply this. You use this to multiply this. You use this to multiply this. You use this to multiply this 4 times. Are you ready? Now let's go. Now, root 3 times root 3, you get root 9. Root 3 times root 3, you get root 9. Okay? Root 3 times minus root 2, you get minus root 6. Because 3 times 2 is 6. But the minus plus, you get minus. Then use this one now. Root 2 times root 3, it will be plus, because there's no minus there. So plus 2 times 3 is 6, plus root 6. Then root 2 times minus root 2, you get minus root 4.